Hello and welcome to my segment on milk paint. I love this finish. It's very versatile and it's used mostly in old world finishes, but you can do it up for other finishes as well. My name is Joellyn for Joellyn's Eye for Design. You can find me on Facebook. I started following Amy a few years ago, watching her with the Maker Studio. Then I was seeing some furniture finishes and I wanted to learn more about that because I always dabbled in paint. So then she announced that she was doing a live event and I went to Memphis to meet her. There she is right there. And I must admit I was a little starstruck. She is just so talented and so lovely in person. And after that course where I met so many wonderful women that are friends for life for me, and that is a really cool part of this. It's a wonderful group of creative women who want to help each other and support each other. Then I went to the Old World Finishing course and here I am in Inner Circle. So no matter if you are a beginner, if you own your own business, or you're somewhere in the middle like me, you can find something that you like and that you will enjoy. All you need is the will, the enthusiasm to want to do it, and you will learn something. I hope you learned something today. So let's get started with mixing our products and play with some milk paint. Let's go over the products and supplies that you will need to create this finish. You always start with clean slate, whether it is a painted or stained piece. If it's rollwood, you do not have to, but you must remove any of the dust, any old furniture polish or surfactants that could interfere with the beautiful finish that you're going to create. I created a custom color with some Ballet white and just a touch of linen. Mixed up our gesso, which goes on top of the one-step paint, and this is a product that was created by Amy Howard just for the milk paint. You cannot find this fabulous product anyplace else, and this will create some slight fissure cracks, or you can do more of a deeper intense crack if you put more of this product on. I created a custom color using Riviera blue and Amalfi Coast. This is a greenish blue that will go with some of my other pieces that I have here at the lake. I also mixed up some of their black, which is their Noir, to add a little bit of depth to my piece. After we have the milk paint on, we're going to add some antiquing glaze, which allows you to remove some of the milk paint and let the gesso and the one-step paint show through. Gonna add a little bit of variegated copper gold leaf to add a little bit of sparkle here and there. Gonna finish up with our waxes. One's the Mind Your Own Beeswax, which is made of carnauba wax and beeswax, and this will give you a very smooth finish, a very hard finish that it just makes it beautiful. Gonna add a little bit of dark wax here and there. Also, we'll need several containers of glass or plastic to mix up your products. Synthetic brush for your one-step paint. A few chip brushes to apply the gesso, milk paint, and waxes. And we're going to create this finish on this table, taking it from cute to classy. I hope you like it. Next, we're going to mix up the milk paint. I mixed them up earlier, and it's very important to keep your measurements the same between your milk paint and your water. I did 2 cups of the Amalfi Coast and 2 tablespoons of the, I'm sorry, I got the backwards. 2 cups of the Riviera Blue and 2 tablespoons of the Amalfi Coast. Just for mixing purposes, I'm just gonna mix up a little bit. And the colors are very rich pigments, and Amy has these shipped in from Provence. They are authentic, from the authentic quarries that were used hundreds and thousands of years ago to make milk paint. It has casein in it, so it will keep in the refrigerator for 2 weeks if you can't finish your project. So that's why it's so important to get your mixture right so that your color valuation will be the same. So just in 2 of those. And you're gonna see how pretty this is. When you're mixing paint colors, you want to do it in the dry form. Look how pretty that greenish blue is. At my lake house, I have a lot of turquoise, blues, greens, so the project I'm working on is going to fit perfectly, I think. So we're going to start with mixing the 2 tablespoons, because you should start with a little bit anyway to get it started, and then you can add more water, and it will be very watery. You can make this a couple hours ahead of time. You want it to set up a little bit. You can make it overnight, keep it in the refrigerator, but then it must come to room temperature on its own. Don't microwave it. And when you're remixing it, just make sure that you're getting all the pigment in the bottom, because it will settle. And when you're working on your project, take your brush and agitate it every now and then. Check it to make sure it's not stuck on the bottom, so that your color will stay true to color. So it is very, very watery and milky, but it's so beautiful. I just love working with it. So I made this earlier so you could see that it does settle. It gets a little glumpy. You don't want to be painting with clumps. You don't want to be painting with foam or any bubbles. So if you do get some, you can scoop them out with a spoon, or you can put it through some cheesecloth. Okay, pretty, pretty. Let's get started. Okay, time to create. So remember what I said, the first step was to use the clean slate. It's a liquid, you can shake it up a little bit. You're gonna put some on a cloth, and you're gonna wipe your piece down. Get all in the grooves, all around the edges. Wipe it really good. I would continue to clean a piece until the cloth comes clean, especially if it's an older piece, and especially if it's stained. The painted pieces are easier to clean. And we're gonna let that dry. And I'm gonna go over the steps while that's drying. You can see this is a goldish color stain. It's got some green paint in it. There are parts of the drawer and the top of the table that had these flowers on it. I painted over it. I'm thinking I should have left a part for you to see, but I think you can see it in the before picture. Then over here I have 2 coats of the one-step paint. I'm going to be putting the gesso on that. I got a little ahead of myself over here. I should have left this one blank. So we're gonna jump to this leg here, and this has the 2 coats of the gesso on it. We're gonna sand that, and we're going to put the milk paint on it, and then this will be the antiquing process here. Okay, so let's go back to our first leg. Now when you're using a project, do you know that you can save your brush, put it in a baggie, or I wrap mine up in some plastic wrap and keeps it moist so it doesn't dry out. I'm gonna agitate my paint a little bit. This is a little bit of Ballet white and a little bit of linen. And I pour mine in a separate container. I don't usually do the can unless it's a smaller project, because the can be hard to open. But if you do use the can, cover some saran wrap on top of the can and then cover it with the lid, and you won't get any rust, and it'll be easier to come off. So the one-step paint has really good coverage. Chalk paste. And we're just gonna cover everything. This took 2 coats to cover all of that green and gold. And you want to do, it's hard to do on this piece, but when you're usually using milk paint, you want to use long strokes. You can add a little bit of water to the paint. You can mist your brush a little bit if you think it's too thick for you. And it's better to use 2 thin coats than 1 thick coat. I'm just going to get this all covered in, and then when that dries, I'm going to put on my second coat. Now the table's laying down, so I can't get to the other side, but I will do that later. Off camera, I'll finish it and do some touch-ups on it. Okay, and your first coat of one-step paint is usually thinner. You usually see the color underneath it, unless it's a bare wood. But the second coat, as you can see here, it covers it really well. Let's move this a little bit. Okay. Now we're going to get the cracked gesso. This has been sitting for a little bit. So it's a nice sour cream consistency. Make sure that it's blended from settling. And the same thing I did with that brush is I wrapped it up in plastic wrap. Because I had a few brushes, I also put them in a Ziploc bag. Now I write on all my brushes, I recommend that. This one says the cracked gesso. I have brushes for my waxes, light wax, dark wax, cracked patina, all those have their own brush. When my project is done, then I will wash off my brushes with the milk paint, and the one step can be washed with soap and water. The gesso can be washed with a little bit of Dawn. Okay. So you're going to put some on your brush, you're going to agitate it a little bit. Now remember, this has 2 coats of one step. And you're going to brush this on. It really goes on like a glue, almost. And remember, this product was formulated by Amy. Nobody else has it. And it works just with the milk paint. So we're going to get in all the areas here because we're going to be antiquing this. We're going to have some color variation. And when that dries, we're going to sand it and then put on the second coat, and then we're going to sand the second coat, which is what I'm going to do right now on my last leg. Slide this down a little bit. This over. Actually, I'm going to turn this around. Table's kind of heavy, so gotta be careful. I think we can see the last 2 legs better this way. Sorry about that. And then I will also paint the bottom of this as well. Get a little bit closer. Okay, so this leg here has on the 2 coats of the gesso. Now the reason to sand it is you want it to be smooth to the touch. does have some rough spots. And we're just gonna sand that off, get in the little pieces there. And then we're gonna wipe that with the cloth because you don't want any of the residue on there. And wipe that off. And then we're ready for the next step. Okay, ready for some magic, or as I like to call it, science experiment. We have our antiquing glaze. We're gonna pour a little bit in a dish, and then we have a glass with some water in it for our bath, so we can rinse off the sponge because it will get some paint on it as you're pressing down. So we're gonna get the sponge really wet and wring it out. Move this over here. Get it as close as you can. See, there's some cracking here, which I love. And there's some more on the sides of the table and especially on the top, which I'll show you. So you take your sponge and you want to press it in to the milk paint and just vary your pressing. And you're gonna take one pass and then you're gonna let it sit just for a few seconds, and it's gonna soften up the paint. And then you'll see that the paint starts to lift off, and we're gonna see the gesso and the one step underneath. If this had been a stained piece, you really would see 3 colors. But since the gesso and the paint are the same color, we're gonna see 2. All right, so let's see if we can get some of this milk paint to lift off. You can kind of turn your hand a little bit when you're pressing it. And it's starting to come off. The next steps are I'm going to add a little bit of black milk paint, the Noir, to do a little bit of a wash effect. And then when I put the waxes on, the light and dark wax, and also the dust of ages, which I wasn't sure if I was going to put it on here. I didn't talk about it in my supplies, but in thinking more about it, I think the dust of ages, which looks like a dust, would look really nice inside all of these recessed areas and really make it look old. So you just keep pressing it until you get it the way that you like it. And if you take off too much color, you can go back and always add more to the areas that you want a little bit more color. And there you go. Pretty pretty. As you're putting your antique glaze on, you will also notice that the color of your paint is going to change. Mine is taking on more of a green tone. So when you are creating a color, have a few samples of your milk paint already mixed up and do some sample pieces, putting your antiquing glaze on and see what color you like the best. You don't want to have it all exactly the same. You want a little bit here and there. Make sure it's pleasing to the eye, it's balanced. You'll see some cracking at this point. I have some up here, I have some down here. If you take off more color, like I said, you can always add more. And it just gives it a new look. Okay, we're gonna let this dry, and then we're gonna move over to the next leg, and we're gonna add the second color. We are ready for the next step of milk paint. And remember, you want to agitate it before you use it. You want to make sure that all of the pigment is mixed up good. I use gloves for this part because I make a mess. I actually spilled a lot on me earlier. So, yep, I did. Okay, so we're getting our chip brush, and I am going to do a very light, almost a dry brush. But before I do that, I want to say that when you are doing your milk paint finish, you can stop here and then just add your light wax, dark wax, and dust of ages if you want to. You do not have to do this step. I wanted to have a little bit more of an antiquing look and then put the dust of ages in the grooves here. So this is something optional. So I'm just gonna put a little bit on my brush, dab it, blot it I should say, so that it's, a lot of it is coming off, because I want just a light look to this. I don't want a lot. So you just start very lightly, and we're just brushing and brushing, just taking some light strokes. That's all it is. To put some in the grooves down here or up here. I should do that. Around the edges here, if you want to put some in here, but there will be some dark wax in there or dust of ages, so I'm not too worried about getting it all in there. I just want it to be a light look. Don't want too much. I'll put a little bit up here, around here. Now you can dab it with a cloth, or you could go back and use the sea wool sponge again that we used for the antiquing glaze. I'm gonna rinse mine off a little bit. And blot it. So I think I want to use the sea wool sponge instead. See how that looks. If I need to add more, I'll add more. And it's just lightly, because it'll smooth out the lines so they're not too heavy. Just go back over here, just blot some. Kind of like that. I'll go all the way up. Okay, adding some of the Mind Your Own beeswax like we did to the little legs. So remember, you put it on your brush and you really mix it around on the cardboard to offload. And very lightly go over your piece. You can go over the copper leaf, and it's just little twist motions of the hand to get that on there. You can see that good? And it brings out the different colors. You can see the blues, the black, a little bit of white. This one you can actually see a little bit of the original stain that was on the table. That's cool. I'm gonna let this dry. I'm gonna put on a little bit of dark wax and the dust of ages. When ready for the dark wax, I'm gonna put a little bit on your brush and do an offload, because you want very little bit on there. We're just adding a little bit of color, similarly to when I put on the black milk paint. We're just gonna add a little bit on the edges here. You barely touch it, very lightly. You don't wanna overdo it with the dark wax, but you must have light wax first before you use this. And it also will allow the dust of ages to stick. And you don't have to put it everywhere. Put it in some of the grooves, the corners, the rounded areas. Because these are shaped like this, it's easy to put it where you want. If you're using a flat surface, you have to be, I think, a little bit more careful where it's gonna go. It's easier to put it in the grooves. So let's get the dust of ages. Before the dust of ages, you wanna make sure that the dark wax has come to tack. It's not slippery anymore. Dust of ages looks like this. Kind of like sand, dirt, ashes. And again, I have my marked brush. So I'm using the right one. We're gonna dip it. And dip it in the container here. Oh, let me see it here. And then we're gonna put it in the grooves where we want it. It's messy. I really don't want it everywhere, just where I want a little bit more depth. This is also where you would think somewhere would be from people touching it. And then get a clean cloth. And you're gonna spread it a little bit. And then you're gonna be buffing this along with the wax that's on there. And you can see how it already comes to this really pretty sheen. Just feels so good. It feels so smooth. Milk paint must be sealed. The preferred way is with wax, but you can also do a matte sealer. You can do furniture tonic, but it must be sealed because if it's not, it can be reactivated with any water or even a wax. If you put it on heavy, it's gonna make the milk paint come off. But you just want this beautiful shine. And over time, the wax gets harder. And it just looks so beautiful. So there you have it, where we have all the steps to create a milk paint finish. I want to show you another angle of using the dust of ages and how you can tell when your wax is ready for it is when you are rubbing with the cloth. If you feel any kind of drag or pull, you know that it's not properly come to tack yet. That's very important because if the Mind Your Own beeswax and the dark wax are not dry before you apply the dark wax, you'll get a third color and it won't have the right dimension. It'll just blend together more like a third color. So once they're the right consistency and you put this on, it just gives it a nice added color. And when you're rubbing it and buffing it, it's, to see it in person, it's just so pretty. Some pieces you can use more. I've seen Amy where she really puts it on heavy. And I think it depends on the piece.
And take our cloth again, and we're just gonna continue to wipe it, rub it, buff it. I'm hoping with this piece you can see the shine appearing. It's so pretty. It does look like a pretty polished shoe. Looks like you're buffing a shoe, like Amy says. It's so pretty. I am loving it. That's what gives it the unique look.
I hope you enjoyed my segment. I hope that you learned something. I hope that you're motivated to use milk paint. You're gonna just love the product and you're gonna amaze yourself at all of the different creations that you can put together. My tagline is, what can you create? Please follow me on Facebook at Joellyn's Eye for Design. You have a great day and thanks for watching.